Well, joining us on this edition of the News Review, we have head of the Islamic Human Rights Commission, Mr. Masood Shahjat, who's joining us from London. Also joining us from the British capital, we have CEO of MPACUK or MPACUK, Mr. Imran Shah. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Imran Shah, give us your thoughts on these demonstrations, also about the issue of free speech. We know that there's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to the issue of freedom of speech in countries like France.
Yeah, and even when it came to a court ruling in 2018, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that any unnecessary degradation of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is actually not covered under free speech at all. And yet what you have here is this grandizing and almost crusade-like fever when it comes to freedom of speech, when really this is just a cover for racism and Islamophobia. And yeah, it is about Macron trying to essentially win votes from the far right, but there's also, just this year, Macron boasted in a public speech stating since 2017 over 200 Muslim businesses has been shut down, over nearly 20 masjids, 4 cultural centres that are Muslim owned. And what this is also about is that the Muslim communities inside France are now starting to have economic and social advancements in a society that's overtly racist. So they see any minority, not just Muslims, but any minority that is rising through the ranks of a racist society, the elites of that society will do everything they can to crack down on that minority. So this is not simply about, this is not just simply about, like, it's not even about free speech. This is about power play amongst a racist elite upon a minority that is demanding to live in peace, to practice their faith, and to be equal citizens of that society.
Imran Shah, I'm going to stay with you. Just a few days ago, the Iranian foreign minister, he spoke on the issue, Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif. Basically what he was saying was that the insensitive comments coming from the likes of Emmanuel Macron, it not only adds to the anger of Muslims, but in a way it also fuels the fire of extremism as well. Did Emmanuel Macron consider the ramifications and repercussions of his comments and actions?
It's obvious that he didn't. Look, the reason why he's now going to platforms like Al Jazeera Arabic, begging for the Arab world to not boycott France, is because he's basically saying that he's made an error in judgment. He's actually having the audacity to lie to their faces, saying this is not what I meant, when it's clear only a few weeks ago he was essentially sticking up for Charlie Hebdo. So, I mean, this was a complete blunder and complete miscalculation and incompetence by Macron, but also his administration. But we also have to understand that he's, like, in the wider scheme of things, like, France itself is very vulnerable. Like, I mean, it was only a few presidents ago, Jacques Chirac said that if it wasn't for Africa, France would regress to a third world economy and a third world power. That's how much they depend upon the Arab and the African countries to essentially give this so-called tax to France. But if they all just boycotted France, France would be completely and utterly relegated to, just a speck on the world. So, it's heartening to see that this is happening. But what I would want to see, rather than focus on the Prophet Muhammad SAW only, which is highly important, we also have to look at the dignity of Muslim lives, and this applies to not just France, but Palestine and other areas of the world as well.